You write that Buddha taught that all people suffer from their own mental states with feelings of discontent that come from desiring more and more. The Dalai Lama tells us that the feeling of not having enough and wanting more does not arise from the inherent desirability of the objects we are seeking, but from our own mental illusions. Buddha taught us how to end suffering by changing our states of mind, which translates into finding happiness through living a meaningful life. Now, this reminded me of a conversation I recently had with Vivian Raoul, who has a new book out on subvertising, that is, subverting advertising in public spaces. Vivian started his book with a quote from Sut Jahali, a professor of communications at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, whose work focuses on cultural studies, advertising, media consumption. Jahali says 20th century advertising is the most powerful and sustained system of propaganda in human history, and its cumulative cultural effects, unless quickly checked, will be responsible for destroying the world as we know it. As it achieves this, it will be responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of non-Western peoples and will prevent the peoples of the world from achieving true happiness. Simply stated, our survival as a species is dependent upon minimizing the threat from advertising and the commercial culture that has spawned it. How much is advertising, in your opinion, an impediment to having a Buddhist approach to economics? How much is advertising contributing to our discontent? How much is it brainwashing us in a way that makes it so the public will be opposed to Buddhist economics?
Oh, I think advertising is powerful, and I love the quote you just did. I just think it's completely pushing the right button. And then the question becomes, how do we sort of get around this? But, a lot of people, when they hear the Dalai Lama explaining, there's nothing inherent in those goods that it's going to make you happy. You go out and you chase these goods, and we have many economic studies now and say when you go to buy something or you win something, or you're happy for just a very short time, and then you revert back to your sort of unhappy state or previous state of happiness, and then you start chasing the goods again. And it's just this endless, relentless chasing of goods or power or sex or whatever it is you're dying to have. And that's what you want to let go of and say, oh, so in Buddhist economics, everyone needs to have the basics and enough to be comfortable. And then we want to help them think about, oh, what's really important to me? How do I develop my relationships and have experiences that are meaningful? How do I develop my inner life so that no longer am I out there chasing materialistic goods, and instead I have a family life, a work life that's meaningful and feels good and makes me happy. So one thing about Buddhist economics I like is we're told continually by the Dalai Lama and others, everyone can be happy. The world's not a zero-sum game. The nice thing about Buddhist economics is when you are better off and do better, it helps me. Same with me. So you think of Indra's net. Have you ever seen Indra's net?
No, I have not.
Oh, it's great. It's like this infinite net, and every single knot has a jewel in it that reflects all the other jewels. So anytime something happens with one jewel, it's reflected in all the jewels. And so that's the Buddhist image of interconnectedness, which I happen to like a lot. And you combine that with impermanence. And so if you have, we're all interconnected, we're all permanent. So by the way, while you're chasing all these goods and services, what are you getting for it? And people realize, oh, it's impermanent. It's like I have a closet full of crap. So we say at some point, let's move from closet full to mindful, from the market economy to the Buddhist economy.
You write that on the same weekend in January 2015, two very different articles appeared. One in the highly respected journal Science reported that threats to our environment endanger our way of life. The other in the New York Times described the servicing of private super yachts that require professional crews and cost millions of dollars. The Science article reported that an international team of 18 scientists have found that 4 of the 9 Earth biophysical processes crucial to maintaining the stability of the planet have become dangerously compromised by human activity. The New York Times article reported that more than 1/5 of the estimated 5,000 super yachts in the world were actually purchased in the last 5 years during the Great Depression. You add, I suspect that many more people paid attention to the New York Times article than the Science article, despite our knowledge about the disastrous damage that we are inflicting on the earth. Consumption continues to fascinate and accelerate. Materialistic drives are pushing us toward the sixth extinction, as many as are now referring to today's ongoing extinction of species. To you, what explains why we are still fascinated with hyperconsumption while not being as interested in the way that same hyperconsumption is destroying the planet?
It is, and I think the yacht story is just a wonderful story. But and actually, I live in the Silicon Valley, so when I go out, I've actually heard CEO titans bragging to each other exactly how long their yachts are, and they do it in inches. It's like quite shocking. Wow. I've even heard captains of the finance industry bragging about their wine openers. And how exactly they work and how fancy they are, whatever the newest, latest gadget is. And those are the positional status goods. It's like they sit around and compare and brag. It's like, oh, my gosh. But, even though I think the rest of us are somewhat intrigued by reading about or hearing about these things, I think, in fact, though, when you talk to people seriously about it, like when I talk to my students about it and we talk about these examples, they're totally appalled. They can't believe that the people that we should be respecting, our CEOs and the business leaders we have, are sitting around talking about how long their yachts are and how they open their wine. It's like, what? So I think actually at some level people are quite disgusted by it.
Does Buddhist economics, I'm going to hate the way I'm phrasing this, but does Buddhist economics mean more government interference, as the right would see it, in the economy, as free market supporters would call it, government interference?
Yes, it does. It means government programs. The whole point for a social democracy is, and government structure markets. Even the free market has government structures because the government has to provide rule of law and the government has to protect private property. But if you move over to social democracies or another form of market economies, then the government is structuring the economies to get the outcomes they want for equity, the outcomes they want for sustainability, the outcomes they want for reducing suffering and shared prosperity. So, and you get the outcomes you want for, having communities, family life, balancing work, and having decent jobs. The government plays a very, very important role, and the government's going to play a role in any economy. It's just a matter of what role and how big a role. But let me tell you, it is true that some people have bought this bill of goods that somehow they have this enormous right of freedom of choice, and they don't want any interference. But what these people don't understand is that we already have social norms and all kinds of ways that our behavior is, fortunately, construed and sort of formed, and so we all get along together. And the other thing that sort of makes me sad but laugh at the same time is that you'll hear the sort of the alt-right say, nobody's going to tell me what to do, and yet they turn around and want to tell other people what to do in terms of sex or race or gender or whatever. So there's a lot of inconsistency, and to be honest, I don't ever expect the alt-right to do or think anything is okay with Buddhist economics, but they're a very small part of the population. I do think that Trump's followers would be more than willing to at some point say, you're right. We need to have a way that our economy is working much better because, look, our towns are devastated. And we need to find a way to come together and feel good about how we're living and how we're working. But that's okay. I don't ever expect the alt-right to like what I'm doing.
You're right. You don't have to be a Buddhist to embrace a Buddhist approach to economics. You need only share the Dalai Lama's belief that human nature is gentle and compassionate and embrace the idea that economics can be a force for good, one that goes beyond self-centered materialism. So is Buddhist economics about the way I personally, individually engage with the current economic system? That is, can I simply start acting in a more compassionate manner when making purchasing decisions and fighting against my own self-centered materialism? Are my own personal purchasing decisions a step toward a systemic change that could lead to more compassionate, even Buddhist economics? Or is this more about not just having an individual or doing something with your own consumer decisions, but trying to get this to be the system that we need to have?
Oh, Chuck, you live Buddhist economics. Of course, you don't need to be a Buddhist. All you need to do is care about the human spirit, care about people all over the world, and helping them live a better life, and help nature, help the environment. And you do it all the time with your show. Your show is like a living example of how to dedicate your work and your time and your energy to try and help people understand what's going on and how the world works and how we can make the world work better for everybody.
Well,
You're like a natural Buddhist economist.
So you write that free market economics holds that human nature is self-centered and that people care only about themselves as they push ahead to maximize their incomes and fancy lifestyles. So how much do you think free market economics have made us more self-centered? How much do we recognize the impact that this economic system is having on our decision-making, our politics, our personality, even the way that we relate with other human beings?
Oh, I think it has an enormous impact. And that's why in my book I really push and devote a chapter to measuring economic performance holistically and not by income per capita. And I think it's really important that we totally rethink and how are we going to measure economic performance. And there are lots of ways to do it. We just need to do it. But then also I just saw a study not long ago that said somebody studied what happens to students after they take an economics course. Do they become more selfish? And the answer was yes, they do. Actually, taking a free market economics course, students start to behave more selfish when they're taken to the lab to play games.